I was told you're not done with the youth, like you're not done with all the years you were helping kids.
Do you think there's an aspect that also make us more angry?
I started learning karate as a result of being severely bullied when I was 6. And when my mum found out, they put me in karate lessons. And that resulted in me bashing the living heck out of them, which was not nice.
Matt is Australia's top personal branding expert and founder of Q Media and Social Kung Fu. He helps brands and high-profile individuals with strategy and positioning. Through Social Kung Fu, Matt aims to teach 1 million Aussie kids verbal self-defense and confidence in schools. His work is reshaping the way we defend ourselves in a digital world.
It made me start realizing that forgiveness for myself led to forgiveness of other people. So it's this chain reaction of things. From my experience, it just...
So welcome, Matt.
Hello, Lynn.
This is such a very interesting place here. So I come here to shoot my podcast and I find out that you're a Christian, an entrepreneur, a hustler, someone that I should talk to. And when I did talk to you last week, I'm like, oh my God, you need to be here. So thank you for, creating this amazing production studio, which everyone should use, and for being my guest today.
Oh, no worries. Good to be here, Lynn. And you're Viet?
You're Vietnamese.
Vietnamese, yeah. That's I mean, you can't tell how old we are. Like, I mean, I'm 72 and you're like 67, aren't you?
Yeah, we just look good for our age.
Yeah, we do.
But yeah, we have a lot in common. We're Asian, we're Christian, we're entrepreneur, and I think we share a lot of values. But before we get started into the serious conversation, I'd love to see what you brought in for the show and tell segment.
Oh, show and tell. So I have a white belt here from karate days.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why this means a lot is because I started learning karate as a result of being severely bullied when I was 6. So it's pretty heavy straight away. But like, I was kicked, slapped in the face, thrown in whiz bins as a 6-year-old by several year 6 kids. And when my mum found out that I was being bullied, they put me in karate lessons. But they had just divorced that year. So I was living in a housing commission with my mum, and my dad found out what was happening. He's like, son, you need to protect yourself. So I started getting karate lessons. And that resulted in me bashing the living heck out of them, which was not nice as well, but it was understandable as a 6-year-old angry, hurt boy. It made me start realizing how important your self-worth is, because as a 6-year-old, I thought about identity more than you ought to, because I was adopted. My parents split up when I was 6. I was being picked on severely, a lot of change happening with houses and families. And yeah, I just didn't rate myself.
Yeah. Well, we have another thing in common because I actually did martial arts as well. I did something called For Vietnam.
What was that?
Called For Vietnam or Vietnam karate or something. I did it when I came to Australia. I think what I learned about it is more like the discipline. It's like turning up every week and then having to do the same warm up whole hour or something. It kind of got boring. I didn't really get to fight or use it as much, but I just wonder how much of it made me tough. But I did get into a lot of fights as well. So I would love to hear from you. Is in like, I know we equip ourselves with karate, martial arts, but do you think there's an aspect that also make us more angry and revenging? Because I did go through a period where I kind of wanted to revenge, or just I was a hurt kid growing up, not being loved, and I kind of took violence in a different way. As much as you don't want to be bullied, you kind of also project the very thing that you don't like to do. So yeah, I'd love to hear if you've thought about that.
There's a good debate in psychology land around if anger is a first emotion or a second emotion, secondary emotion or a primary emotion. And there's an argument to say that anger is a secondary emotion. So it's a core, there's something that causes anger. And I'd say that if you're angry, a lot of men get angry, females get angry too. It was a human emotion, but it's usually because you're hurt.
People hurt people.
Yeah, so like anger is a synonym of hurt. And you can do it one or two ways. You can have the dirt on your hands, which is anger, and wipe it on yourself, or you could put it on other people. And yeah, I think it's natural to want revenge and an eye for an eye. And Gandhi said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, right? So it doesn't always fix everything, but there's a line between being on a human doormat and actually sticking up for yourself and protecting your worth. Like we protect our houses, we protect our cars, we have locks from the inside of the door. And I say this in my philosophies and teachings, is that a lot of people treat their own house and their own car with more respect than themselves. They have locks and doors on the house. They don't just let any stranger into their car or their house. They're the one who owns the place. So why the hell do you let people talk to you the way they do?
Mm,
And why do you let them push you around verbally or physically?
mm,
So
mm.
yeah, I think there's a lot of great principles in martial arts. And like anything, it's how you use it.
Yeah.
If you're going out and finding fights, or if you happen to be in a neighborhood which is a bit dangerous, you
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah. So growing up, I heard there's a lot of, really big milestones or turning points for yourself, from being adopted to divorce. I guess, take us through which were some of the most painful moments for you growing up.
I think when I was old enough to recognize my facial features, I looked at my mum and dad and thought something's odd because my mum and dad are white.
Mm.
So I thought, hang on,
At what age was that?
I was about 4 or
Okay.
at 3. And I'm
It's
thinking,
pretty young to observe. Yeah.
I look like I was kidnapped. So was I kidnapped? Like, Mum, did you kidnap me? And they're like, no, you adopted. And they explained it up front, transparent the whole way. My sister is adopted as well from Taiwan. And that didn't really bother me at all until I had them divorce. So like when we were 6, there was a messy divorce. Mum and dad didn't hide any details and shield me from it. I hated both their guts as a kid because of the feedback I got from them about each other. Like, your dad did this. Oh, I hate my dad. Your mum did this. It's why, oh, yeah, I hate my mum. You guys are both pretty bad people.
Mm.
And on top of that, going to a new school, going to a new house, meeting new step parents and dating and all that stuff as my parents were moving on was just really unsettling. So I went very deep and got very hurt and started thinking, oh, I wish I wasn't adopted. I
Mm.
wish I was left behind. And as a kid, you think these things because you don't know what else do you know?
Mm.
So there were big moments early on, which
Did you ever tell yourself, like, what happened to my parents? Did they not want me? Did you have a lot of negative
had very limited
self-assumptions?
Yeah, I had very limited details about their story. I was originally told I was left in a phone box in South Korea. But later in life, I went to Korea and found out the real story was I was conceived by an accident, so one night stand, and my birth mother didn't know she was pregnant until she was in labor because she wasn't educated, and she gave birth to me on the barn floor, and the next door neighbor delivered me. So in a lot of ways, I'm Asian Jesus in a way. I was born on barn floor.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know all those details. All I knew was I didn't feel safe or didn't feel not safe but accepted. And adoptees think about identity more than anyone, especially when you don't look the way that you feel, because I got hardware that's Korean but software is Aussie. And it was just hard to navigate. So I went very deep from a 6, 7, 8-year-old. I was thinking about death a lot. I was thinking about
You were
meaning a
thinking
lot.
about suicide. Or
Not
when you say
suicide.
death-
I was just thinking about I was thinking of life and death as concepts.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'd gravitate toward older kids at school and older men and older women, and I'd do things to try and get attention, which was just like acting out and things like that. A lot of kids do that.
Could your parents have done anything different to help you through your journey, or was it just one of those things where there's only so much they could do to help you feel connected? Or
They did the best they could with what they had. I think they could have been more mature about how much you expose your kid to in terms of content of what the events were.
So was it mainly the divorce that you would say that really impacted you more?
It was more the image, being exposed to the humanity of your parents being only human very early on. And there's kids that see lots of dreadful things in life, don't get me wrong, but for me it shattered that picture of protector, provider, and seeing my mum struggle financially. And like, she used to use the envelope system, so she'd get her Centrelink payments and get them out of the cash and then put them in rent envelope and food envelope and clothes envelope. So I'd see those physical signals, like that cash envelope's there, and I'm seeing her sometimes go, I don't really have enough this week. And I'm freaking out as a boy going, I wish I could do something to help.
So that's really interesting. Whenever I'm thinking about people who adopt kids, I'm thinking they're really wealthy and they can't have kids or something, then they go adopt. So your parents were kind of...
They had to have, to adopt interracial adoption, you do need a bit. You need,
Okay.
I think I had a mate who owned a restaurant who adopted 5 years ago, and I was about upwards of $70,000, $80,000, and 4 or 5 years in the wait list. You had to own property, you had to get a psych
Okay.
test, and that my dad and mum back then was cheaper. My sister was more money than me. I
There's a
was,
price.
yeah. But it's an honourable thing to adopt a child internationally, especially because you're not legally allowed to go, oh yeah, what kin did they come from?
Mm.
What gender are they? Like if you're at the top of the list, well, for my parents, is you get what you get. They could be missing a limb, they could be not all
Okay.
there. So they just wanted to be parents. So I love that they chose me. But for a long time as a kid, I didn't see it as a blessing. I thought it as a negative.
Mm.
And yeah, so things were pretty deep. That
Yeah.
explains my depth in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. You have to
And
swim.
what led you to wanting to become an entrepreneur? Is it, seeing your mum struggling, or where did that, kind of ability and desire to be an entrepreneur come from?
I think two parts. I think in school I realized I didn't like being told what to do, and I was a square peg in a round hole at school in the system. If something just didn't make practical sense to do, like algebra,
Mm.
I was just like, I'm not wasting my time on this crap. So when they started changing the numbers to letters in year 8 or something, I'd be adamant. I mean, like, Miss, when do you use A, B, C? She's like, it's not the correct question. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do this unless it's practical to me. How's this gonna help me get a job? Like, where does this apply? And they couldn't explain it to me, so I didn't try. And my marks reflected that. They're like, Matt does not apply himself. But in some things I excelled at. I excelled at creativity and music and topped nearly the state in that. And I remember in year 8, my first entrepreneurial type of example was mum couldn't afford to send me to camp. So I said, I'll mow the lawn, I'll do anything. She's like, I can't pay you. Like, I have no money to pay you with.
Wrong customer.
I'm like, right, okay. So I went to the principal and asked for a payment plan as a 14-year-old kid.
Mm.
And the principal rang my mum up and said, Matt's brought this up. And mum was embarrassed and brought us in and said, that's a good idea, Matt. If you wash the toilets and wash the science blocks, you can go. So I did that and earned my way to camp. And I just thought that instinct has probably always been in me since I was that little boy.
Mm.
Because don't tell me I can't do it. I'll find if I can't afford it, then I'll find other ways to do it legally. But there's ways around it. Doesn't mean no in business. Like
Yeah.
that's what entrepreneurial spirit is. And I was always told if you get a real job, you'll get fired pretty quick, or you'd be the boss pretty
So
quick.
did you ever got a real job, or was it just entrepreneurship that you went straight into?
It's entrepreneurship.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started teaching music. I started teaching music at school in year 10.
What do you play?
Guitar. So I played session music with Barnsey, Vanessa and Rossi, like big artists when I was 20-something.
Mm.
So like I started teaching guitar to my English teacher in year 9 or something. And that's when I realized the exchange of skill for money, service-based stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, I want to use a few chords. Can you teach me? I'll give you $20. I'm like, $20? That's huge. Or $40 an hour in year 9. That's wicked. And just spend it all at the canteen after. But anyway.
And so what led you into, the Q Media, and now you've got a few ventures happening as well with Janine, and tell us more about it.
It's never a linear line when I enjoy asking people this question too, how did you get to where you are? Because it's not generally speaking, you don't meet successful people and they go, I sat down one afternoon and worked out I used a SMART plan, SMART goal strategy, and I found out my calling that way. It's like, nah, you got to live life. I think the input-output equation for finding your purpose is you got to roll your sleeves up and be willing to take a risk, which is what faith is, and just head a direction. And you'll get feedback along the way. God never told people this is exactly what you're going to do.
So
Like,
how
he might
did
have given
music
them a
lead
promise.
into digital marketing?
Well, music and marketing are pretty much so important to one another. Musicians can be so talented but not known.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to get a gig? You could be the best singer, but no one hears of you. Your gift is worthless. I mean, it's useless because it's not being used because you're
No
not
one
being
knows you.
seen. So I usually say there's 3 things to why people aren't really successful. One is you're not known enough. You're good enough, but you're not known enough. Can't save souls in an empty church, right? And you could be good enough, but not. You can be good enough, but not known enough. You could be known enough, but you're not that good. So that's when good marketing makes bad products fail fast. So this guy could be all like, this guy's the best thing ever. He's really out there, really singing, and you see him live and they can't sing. Or their product really sucks. It's just a copycat of someone else's. You could be known enough and good enough, but not clear enough. So there's no real system or no real offer or no real niche to understand how could I best work with you. And being a musician, I had to find out really quickly, how am I going to get chosen over the other guitarists? That's through marketing. How am I going to be trustworthy to be chosen out of the other guitarists who can play the exact same thing, the same capability, and they choose me? It's not ability. It's relatability. It's likability. It's reliability. It's so many other abilities that gets you chosen in the world of success. Because people don't want to work with jerks, and people don't want to. You need to be a good cultural fit. Like, I remember auditioning for a band, and they're like, well, 7 other guitarists auditioned. We all were able to play the 4 songs for the band. But I was really, are you the right look? Are you the right vibe for us? That was really on audition and for grabs, not just if you could play the 4 songs or the 4 chords.
Yeah. So did you also have to apply some social media marketing or whatever else to grow your musician kind of position? And how did you get into those big gigs? So if someone's listening, if they've got some kind of musician arts kind of ability, what tips would you give them to grow their brand?
In the Business Academy with Janine, Alice, and I, we talk a lot about marketing and brand, and really it's quite simple. It's just asking, who are you trying to reach? If you try and boost a post on Instagram, you just click the big blue boost button, the first thing it'll ask you is, what's your goal? And it says, like if you want website reach, if you want like more people to see your profile, then it asks your next question, who do you want to reach? And marketing is just a simple thing of, who are you trying to talk to, and where are they located, and how old are they, and are they white collar or blue collar? Are they outdoors or indoors? For example, Janine shares this story of how she was at a lawn bowls game, and she saw advertisement on the grass that she was on for a nursing home and for a funeral home, and that's great marketing. It wasn't, because that type of customer isn't on Facebook. They're at the lawn bowls. So it's not saying everyone's on Facebook, but a lot of people are. It's the biggest country in the world. There's billions of users on there. But I say the principle of marketing is, sometimes the person you're trying to reach is in an office, and the decision maker is not on Facebook. They're reading AFR instead of Facebook. So you got to be like, where are these platforms that these people are most likely consuming on, and making decisions. So yeah, I'd say social media is one of those great plays. And I learned that from being a musician. There wasn't a lot of social media tools around. It was just fairly immature, the platforms. But the real smart people, the real smart, savvy, I love the word savvy. I've always loved savvy. My dad always said, street smarts will beat book smarts every day, right? You're a survivor, you're a hustler. You got to know enough to be able to get the result. Meaning, you can hear some of the legends like Jamie Foxx, who was a great actor and he's a great musician. Stories about him using the pager, the old pages, and gathering pager numbers. That's equivalent to today's mailing lists. So musicians always know there's a rented audience and then there's a owned audience. A rented audience is a free platform like Instagram. And your owned audience is your own email list, from getting them to your own audience.
You really got to treat it like a business.
Yeah. If you have talent but no business and no system, you live gig to gig. You don't have a business. You're just an entertainer, and you will not make it.
Yeah, because there is kind of like this argument. Like, a friend of mine is, she loves to perform, and she decided not to get into performance or arts anymore because thinking that it's just a hard industry. It's so she's getting into business because business is a lot easier. So what's your thought on that? Like, there are probably certain industry that you think It's just your odds are a lot harder than, doing a business in marketing. It might be easier than doing a business in something else, such as musician.
I find people who get frustrated at life generally don't have clear goals. Like that person probably doesn't have a clear goal on what, I'll dare say I don't know this person, but most people can't tell me what success actually is in X industry. Oh, I want to be a musician and I want to be successful. What is that, Guy Sebastian level? Or is that
Or let's
earning?
just say earn a good living, earn enough, doing what you love and get paid. Let's say call it 100 grand. Like, what would you say to that?
Well, that's a great goal.
Mm.
And I think it's a very achievable goal
Mm.
because you got to look at, okay, if that's divide that by 10. How many is that? It's 10 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So can you do 10 gigs for 10 grand a year? Or can you, so you start chunking it down. Okay, if I love performing, how many gigs what's the average market rate for a gig these days? How many gigs do I need to get 100 grand? What's the most paying, who's the most successful person in my local area that's what are they getting paid? Is it a wedding gig? Is it a regional gig? And can I upsell people, my fans, to be able to buy merch or other things like that? So there's so many ways to think about reaching that target, but you've got to start like what Facebook's boost said. What's your goal?
Yeah.
Most people don't have any goal.
That makes sense. Yeah, because sometimes when you're in that that kind of sector, you're thinking like, I want to be famous. I want to do what I love, and it's a bit vague. I'm just guessing here because I too wanted to be an actor once.
Oh, you're stunning.
3 or 4 years ago, I thought I wanted to be acting because like I was lucky enough to get a gig as on a TV ad, and I thought, oh, this was easy, this is fun. But then I realized you still got to hustle for it, and compared to all these actors that's been around for 10 years, I'm like, I'll just give it a miss and I'll just continue being in business and maybe utilize it in other ways, just such as this,
Yeah.
Okay, so you finished your musician career and then you got into the Q media, and love to hear more about the social kung fu as well, because that's such a interesting business, and it's all around the whole bullying that you experienced when you were young. So if you're going to share that.
Yeah, so I was a musician and I realized that you have to be business savvy to be able to be a great musician because you are up against everyone else who can play the same songs as you. So you have to be marketable. And to get me by, I started a music school. So I started tutoring on the side and all that, but it became very big. And I started hiring my musician friends and I didn't know how to hire. So I had to learn how to do a subcontract or a contract. And then I said, okay, mate, you're gonna tutor on my deck. I'm gonna tutor out in the lounge room, and you're gonna tutor with the door open in the spare room until I can get a property. And we got enough students to get into a lease, and then that grew to 3 campuses, and we had heaps of staff, hundreds of kids. And in that journey, you realize that I'm no longer the musician anymore. I am the business owner. And this thing becomes a living entity. It's got its own credit file. It's got its own address. It's got its own bank account. It can be robbed. It can be sued. It is a living thing. People talk about it even when it was starting as you, and you got to treat this thing with respect. And there's stages of growth that you go through where it's all on you. And then you start putting things out of your head and start achieving the results you were getting through other people.
How did you feel moving from kind of following your passion, being a musician and feeling the music to now like kind of running a business? Did you enjoy that transition?
I struggled with the transition because my identity, the label I had on myself was not business owner. It was creative. It was musician or talented, I was told my whole life. So I reckon it was my second campus I opened up and I realized there's even an article in the Newcastle Herald or something about he finally has accepted he's a business guy, and and that was a shift in my mind. I had to give myself permission to give myself a job description change. And that made a big difference because my pride and my utility wasn't in being the tutor or being the musician. It was just being the owner of the trains and hoping and training someone up to be able to make sure they get there on time. But I had to learn how to market a business then, not just myself. So I learned, looking back, personal branding was a massive part of my success because of the musician background I had. And people buy you and they know you, and if they trust you, then if you're associated with other businesses and they're like, okay, I associate your trust with that thing, I'll give you a look in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that's when Facebook started really maturing and becoming a really big platform to advertise on. So I learnt the importance of having a good marketing message and
Yep.
being really clear, because still it was the same thing as competing with musicians. There's other businesses like offering the same thing as you.
Mm.
There's other VA businesses
Yeah.
like you.
Yeah.
There's other agencies
100%.
like mine.
Mm.
The question is, why should someone choose you over them?
Mm.
And the answer to that question is brand. The brand and story and your proof. And if you don't have them articulated very well, you look like a project home. You look
Mm.
like everyone else. And really, that you're not giving people a good reason to share you or talk about you.
Mm.
So I learned that all through the local business. And then people start asking me, hey, how did you grow an audience? I started growing an audience for my personal brand on Instagram. How are you doing it? And then I'm like, oh, it's the same thing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm helping other people get results. And I was like, oh, my season's kind of coming up. I want to get into more serious business stuff. I want to be in marketing.
Mm.
But I'd never been in marketing, but I had receipts to show that I got results from being a technician and being in the trenches. And
Mm.
that's how I started social media agency back in 2017 or something like that.
Mm. And then when did Social Kung Fu come around?
Well, as a result of COVID, I sold my businesses, my youth centers,
Mm.
and I was told, you're not done with the youth. Like, you're not done with all the years you were helping kids on the edge of life and
When you
helping
say
them.
you're not done, are you talking to God? Do you feel it in your heart or someone's telling you?
Someone's telling me,
Uh-huh.
like, and I felt it ring true. And part of my purpose, I think, is to help people with their identity.
Mm.
Because look at me. Like, I think that's, if in branding, you want to somehow you want to be clear on owning at least one or two words that people can trust you for.
Mm.
And it's not through manipulation or just frequency. It's actually just because it's evident. And I'm drawn to helping people overcome internal issues. Most of the things that are holding people back are not external resources and things like that. It's software issues, not hardware issues.
Mm.
And some people think, oh yeah, I just need a new tool or a new toy to be able to fix whatever it's broken on the
Mm.
inside of me, which is like, you can't have a software issue solved by a hardware solution.
Mm.
So you got to be changed from the inside out.
Mm.
But no one wants to do that because it's not as tangible as buying a new car and going, oh, I accumulate my wealth. That's an example of my worth there. It's like, nah, it's just an engine and it's nice.
So how was it like running a business? I know what it's like to have a marketing agency and then realizing, hey, I feel like my purpose is bigger and I want to serve. And this is kind of the feel-good business. What is it like to navigate the two and trying to balance the two? Because, as an entrepreneur, we always have great ideas and there's a side of us that want to give more, but then it might be the part that takes a while to actually earn money because it's more of the giving part. Yeah, how did you navigate through that?
It purely started as helping people
Mm.
and then getting paid to help people. And it's almost like had a charity vibe to it. I loved that. It was very rewarding. And then there was a part of me that was itching to be used, which is the intellectual side of me. So like there's heart, head, and hands, and the heart was being used. My head was not being used the way that I know, because I'm creative and I like to disrupt patterns and see what's over there and see what's working. So the agency really really scratched that itch for the intellectual challenges,
Mm.
but I missed the heart part of it. So like when I'm doing creative work like this, it's head and hands, but not heart sometimes. When I'm helping kids or helping people find their identity,
Mm.
it's heart and hands.
Mm.
So that's why I feel like people, like entrepreneurs, are very, they can't stay still and they get shiny object syndrome and they're like, I got a new idea now, And I did that. Like I had several things going at once at one point and they're all earning a little trickles of money, but I had to choose which was going to be the long-term play and what can wait, because I feel like in branding, I call it the brand tree trunk. So like you should start doing one thing really well
Mm.
and choosing one channel really well, one or two channels to do it through. And that's your tree trunk. You're known and trusted for at least one thing. And then from that tree trunk, you have branches. So for example, if you look at anyone that we trust, like Gordon Ramsay, he's a household name. You could look at what's his tree trunk. He's what? Primarily he's known for what?
The chef.
He's a chef. So that's his credibility.
Mm.
But then something made him really quite known, and that was like Hell's Kitchen or
On the TV.
on the TV. So he's known as a star, but you could always say, like, who the hell is this guy? He's a 3 or 5, whatever star Michelin chef. Like, you can't get those stars unless you're really good. And then look at all the tree trunks now. He's got businesses over here. He's got multiple restaurants. He's got cookbooks. But it all came from the tree trunk. But I just started with the branches first.
Yeah.
And what you do then, when you have too many things going on at once and you don't focus on find one thing that's going to serve people well and give time to, you end up looking like a general store, and you offer everything, and no one knows. It's almost being like a keynote speaker, and they're asking you, "Hey, Lynn, what do you speak about?" And you're like, "Everything, like parenting, technology, politics, religion, everything." Like, well, you're not credible in anything then.
Yeah. So I guess your focus is all around communication. Yeah, is that why the business is still kind of like linked, even though they're kind of different, serving different audience, but the core of you is all about communication or identity?
I always like the game Monopoly, and I like the idea that if you could own a street, you can do a lot with that. And I always like the idea if I could have a creative agency, a marketing agency, it'd be like owning a street. It'd be like I own the butcher, the baker, and a general store. And they all need to buy from one another. So the owner of the baker gets cheap bread, and the butcher gets cheap meat. The agency, selfishly for me, serves my other businesses, and it's a mutualistic ecosystem. And at the same time, anyone that knows me and trusts me can use my guys. So I thought, what a clever ecosystem that's useful for me and my ability to broadcast and help people with their message too. If you want to broadcast or you want a message, you need a team. And that's what my guys do. So that's the idea of them all being connected. The agency can help create the whole the idea, whilst the other entities, although they're different, continue running their course.
What are your tips around like the team? So you have these different businesses, are the staff working on multiple projects, or you set up a new team for the different project and kind of like in a way outsource to each other?
Our team and a creative agency can handle the great thing about having a creative agency is there's lots of variety. You have you can handle different things at different capacities, but you have your core 4 sergeants for every business that you want. You want to aim to have a core for, like the financial controller, your operations person, your marketing person, and your team person. So like I think that's the aim, and then my agency serves as that marketing person, as one of those core 4.
Now let's go into the Christianity kind of topic, because this is what the channel is all about. I would love to hear, I guess, growing up, were you brought up in a Christian family? Where did you come across Jesus?
Yeah, my mum and dad were Christian, and then are Christian. I can't speak for them, but like they've been on their weird journey. But like they brought me up. My mum, especially when my parents split up, still went to church, and it was a good thing for all of us because I was introduced to youth group and a whole bunch of other cool guys. So I wasn't until I was 12 or 13. I went to a youth conference, which doesn't really happen anymore. Like youth conferences are really rare to what they used to be. And culture's really changed, and it's really forged war against that. And I had a really great encounter and a really great experience as a kid, as a teenager. And I'm like, well, this is real. Like God's real. And that wasn't it, but like I had to work really hard and intentionally on keeping around the right people. That kept me on track, because when you make a decision, then you're attracting a big target and bullseye on your back to make you feel guilty and not make it to the end. So I think as a young guy, I had the experience of having that experience with God, and then I guess going through high school and things like that, and going to youth group, going to church, and then going into the world. It's not until you're tested that it actually strengthens. I can't tell you how many Christians are weak because not because they're don't know the Bible enough. Sometimes that is, they don't know the Bible a lot, but they don't have a worthy opponent.
Mm. Can you elaborate on that?
You can only, like it says in the Bible, count it pure joy when you go through tests and trials and tribulations. That's an old philosophical principle that if you want to level up, you've got to beat the final boss, and that final boss is your lust, or it's you've got to. There's a test that you need to rely on God to overcome this thing, and maybe the wisdom is you don't look for it,
Mm.
but you're going to be presented things that have taken out King David and a whole bunch of people in the Bible. A lot of people are in their own bubbles, and they're so disconnected from the needs of people. And I realized that when I left school, there's so much need out there, and that's where God is. God's where people are needed the most. God goes where the goers are, and God really wants to help the needy. And that's what I believe Christianity and the works of being a Christian is all about, is looking after the widows, helping after the needy
Mm.
with our skills.
So, you said you were growing up and feeling a bit really angry at your parents. And so when did how did Christianity help you through that? Or, did it have a part to play in that?
Yeah, I had to, God gave me understanding. Context gives understanding. And grace, when you receive a lot of forgiveness and grace, I thought I wasn't worth the effort because of the things I'd done as a kid, being an angry kid, was suspended a whole bunch of times and hurt a lot of people as a young boy. I thought I'm not worth the effort because of all this stuff. And then when I got revelation from my own personal experience that I'm worth the effort and God died for me still, and that I can be forgiven, then unfortunately for my flesh, I had to forgive my mum and dad.
Mm.
And then you start asking questions. It opens you up to ask questions to why they are the way they are. If a kid throws a rock at your car and you have no idea why, you just think, oh, he's just an idiot. Why is he throwing a rock at me? It's dangerous. But if you find out that kid was stuck in the middle of the mums locked themselves in the car, and like she's got diabetes and she's passing away, and it changes everything because context gives meaning. So I think God's a very practical God in my experience. Sometimes he explains something, sometimes he doesn't, but usually it's for a use. And that forgiveness for myself led to forgiveness of other people, that then made me curious and open to be able to find out, yes, there's a story behind it, which then helps you have grace for other people because you see them doing things you don't judge straight away. So it's this chain reaction of things. Like, I'm very pragmatic with how I think of it. But that from my experience, it bleeds out to other things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as an entrepreneur, we kind of sometimes get caught up with revenue and KPIs and, growing the business. Have you ever kind of feel like you get off track and kind of forgetting that, you're now living too much on the worldly basis versus, what God wants you to be? Like, have you ever struggled with that, and how often?
I lost my soul for a year. Really, in the thing, I reckon I ignored a lot of what I knew when I was in the big smoke. Big boardrooms with billionaires and screaming matches, seeing grown men, 50, 60-year-old, the net worth of that room was ridiculous, yelling over, when are you going to pay me back, and things like that. And I'm like, a lot younger than these guys, going, what the hell is this? I thought this was in movies. And learning to be able to understand the game when you're in those types of rooms with people who have big enterprises, you realize it's not you can either match that, or do you have to match that to be one of them? And I remember sitting down with a billionaire once and asking him, have I got my affairs in order just as a structure? And the first thing they asked me was, do you want to be a billionaire or a millionaire? I said, what's the difference? They said, a billionaire, you're going to have to be divorced. I'm like, oh, really? Right.
Why?
Why is that? It's like, that's what it takes. You most likely won't make it if you have commitments. Like, well, millionaire sounds good to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a Hollywood moment for me. And I'm like, well, was the wake-up call I needed
Mm.
to be able to see, like, I don't wanna be like this type of person.
Mm.
I don't want to sacrifice that. So one question I ask everyone to ask someone who they admire, who might have a lot of money, is ask them, "What did it cost? Was it worth it?
Mm.
Was it really worth it?
Mm.
What did it cost you to get that?" And the answer generally might be hesitant. And I've asked very successful, and I work with celebrities a lot, and they always say generally, "I wish I could get my 10 years back."
Mm.
And I've given up a couple of years for this. So it's I've got a taste of it,
Mm.
but I'm not looking to be a billionaire. Um, I've got a very clear pathway before I'm 40 to
Mm.
be able to reach my goal, and I'm on my way.
So how is your goal setting different now? Like, or how is your attitude towards life different now and towards success?
At the moment, I think success is two parts. One is knowing when enough is enough. If you don't know when enough is enough, then you are chasing infinity and you are going to miss your calling.
Mm.
I think I can speak that certain about it. Because when is enough houses, when enough cars, when enough money, right?
Mm.
Because right sequence equals right success. St. Augustine said sin means having your love out of order. So there's nothing wrong with money. It's just if it's in the wrong order, it places other things down the bottom.
Mm.
And what serves what. So I always play the game of, if I had $1 billion, that's great, and that was my goal, and I get it. Yeah, you have fun for 3 months. You have fun for life in some areas, but you still have to use it. Like, what are you going to use it for? Like, what's the purpose of it?
Mm.
You thought the thing was going to give you a purpose, but really it needs purpose to be utilized. Are you going to send it here? You're going to send it, you're going to leave it in the bank. Why? So it's the wrong sequence. People are chasing hardware achievements to fill software issues. So success for me is knowing when enough is enough. And that's a very subjective answer. You could go to a financial advisor and they would say you need one property is not enough to be able to live on for what you need for retirement. The capital gains thing doesn't always work. On average, we're 200,000 in deficit as a country for not having enough retirement savings.
Mm.
So there has to be a common level of knowledge brought up and some strategy played out. That's knowing when enough is enough. That's one play. But two is being useful.
Mm.
I want to be useful. I want to be useful for God. I want to be useful to the world.
Mm.
Being useful is better than being happy. Being useful is a state of being, not a achievement or a destination. Being useful means you are useful to yourself and your family, and then you're in service to others. And there are people who are useless but not worthless. I believe that everyone is worth something
Mm.
because they have a divinity about them. But some people are useless because
Mm.
their gift, their calling aren't being used. Literally, this cup is useless if it can't contain some type
If
of
there's
liquid.
a hole, or if it doesn't does what it's supposed to do.
It's a
carry
harsh
water.
message to the world, but you're not worthless. You're just useless
Mm.
because you're being distracted and you're not being focused, and you need to choose something. And sometimes that is sacrifice of success. So
Mm.
knowing when enough is enough is a relief because therefore here's a great test, right? I have a friend. He was a mentor to me. He still is in a way. He has a successful non-for-profit, and I traveled with him around Australia, and I saw him use the charity money fantastically. We'd always stay at a motel, not a hotel. We'd
Mm.
always take the long way, not the expensive way. And I remember he told me he got a call from his board, and they said, "We need to have a meeting. We realized you didn't have a pay rise for 3 years. We'll have to just increase your salary. No more responsibilities required." He said, "No, I'm cool." It's like, "What? It's an extra $30,000 out of nowhere." He's like, "No, I got enough." Like, why? Because for his situation, he renovated, he sold a house, he bought something outright with the capital gains on it. And he was mortgage free at 40 something, but he chose to live in the Western Sydney, not in the northern
Mhm.
beaches. So he sacrificed that to have financial freedom,
Mm.
but he was no more well off than anyone. He just chose a different option to other
Yeah,
people.
it's just a simple life and peace of mind. Sometimes we get caught up in more, and we create a lot of stress for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it seems as glamorous, but sometimes a normal life is a happy life.
Mm.
And I'm realizing that more and more and more
Yeah.
once I've tasted a little bit of what is supposedly meant to be the good life.
Yeah.
5-star hotels it's still got a bed in it, like it's just a little comfier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this leads me to the last question, all around taking the leap of faith and achieving freedom. You did a lot of that. You constantly took leaps, and you're not afraid of anything. What advice would you give to someone who kind of struggles with, certainty, comfort? They want to pursue. They want to be useful, but they're scared. What would you say to them?
I think firstly you got to get on your knees in your bedroom and just go, what am I here for? And just sit on the end of your bed and just ask, did you put me here to do this job? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, great, that's fantastic. If I'm meant to be a creator and get the right messages out there to the world and you use me as that instrument, fantastic. If I'm meant to be a great accountant. But there's usually something apart from your salary and your day job that you're here for. And it's what is the service element? So sometimes the missing key or the missing puzzle to your journey and your purpose is God's put it in other people to show you.
Mm.
So I'd start with God first, and I'd start asking questions to the people who know you most. Like, where do I best light up? Where am I constant flow and you can't stop me? Like, I do it for free. And you start story gathering, I call it, in our framework in personal branding. It's just ask your mum, ask your girlfriends, ask anyone you can find, past girlfriends, by the way, on what was I like? What did I struggle with? I'll start being a very good historian, because confidence comes from evidence, right? If I want to hop on stage, and I don't want to be nervous, I need to preparation gives me confidence, and I want to go to the right source for that stuff. So a lot of people are all by themselves in their head.
Mm-hmm.
They're locked up. So they need to get out of their head. Tony Robbins says, if you're in your head, you're dead. So I'd start there and find someone who you really trust, which I don't know if people have someone. I don't know if that's why you got to go to God first, because he might he will guarantee point you to someone to share your question to and have the guts to look like a fool for a second.
Really great advice. What would you say in terms of like the fact that you lean into, you said you never kind of set out to do all these things, but whenever you saw a missing thing or a request, you kind of lean into it. Like, how do you feel? Like, do you feel like if no matter what, you've achieved that freedom, when you were growing up, you felt like you weren't fitting into whatever it is, but the fact that you've been leaning into your calling, like how free do you feel? I just wanted to...
I felt like rebellious. If you feel a little bit rebellious like I did, and I do, one of the best avenues for you is being a business owner, because at least you get rewarded and you get held accountable either way. And that's what you want. Like, if everyone was Indians, not chiefs, then we wouldn't have leaders. So if you're struggling, you should test out the market. There's some wisdom and some common sense before you test out a new idea. Don't quit your day job, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to run out of cash. There's a sequence and an order to be able to test things out in wisdom. But for crying out loud, life's short. Like, if you feel like you've got something, test out the market the best you can, from the local bubbler at the workplace to your mum and dad locally. See if you think this thing is not just your idea. You got to test things out and then soft launch, do little things like that, because you could be onto something, and you could be the only one. You could feel like Noah in the Bible when you say it's going to rain and no one believes you, but he would have believed if Canva came out saying, I'm going to do a SaaS product and it's going to be blah, 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 $1 billion business. I mean, I've never seen that before. When someone says I've never seen it before, it just proves that it's unfamiliar to people. It doesn't mean it's not wrong.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. I could sit here all day talking with you.
Thanks, man.
I really even wanted to talk more about the social kung fu, which people can check out on the website, because I think it's just amazing. The more I grow my business, the more, even though we're adults, I realize how important communication is. And having young kids, I am trying to teach them that as well, because, as they navigate to school. So everyone, please check that out. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. And of course, I think I also really love the project you're doing with Janine. If you're starting out, trying to start a business, you want to go to someone that actually knows their stuff. There's so many claimed business coaches and, people teaching so much things, and, go to the people that have done it. And so, highly recommend that.
Could I have a little rant on that?
Yeah.
For a second? Seriously, one of my pet hates at the moment, and it's a big warning to people out there that are really wanting help and they're considering coaching. Coaching's fantastic, but it's unregulated, and there are a lot of people out there that are very good marketers, but that actually have nothing to show for their business experience apart from the coaching group they're advertising themselves. It's an absolute joke, in my view, for people to say that they're a guide and they're a teacher if they haven't actually done the work. It's dangerous. The Bible talks about like bad teachers, false teachers. There's plenty of them. And if it's just education content that they're spilling out, that's like tap water, man. Like tap water, you can just go to any tap and get water, and that's fantastic compared to some places in the world. But when you got access to water, you start looking at the source and the quality of the water. Where did that water come from? So I'd say if you're looking for guides, looking for coaches, for crying out loud, ask a few questions. One is, have you ever run a business yourself? Have you ever achieved the results that you have preaching that you're going to get me at least twice? And because for one time it could have been a fluke.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have some criteria because it's an unregulated area, life coaching, business coaching. But that area is fantastic because there are some great people like Janine who have 800 stores worldwide from Boost Juice, and you can actually get your question answered from her. You kidding me? That's like masterclass.com, but you get to talk to Steven Spielberg. Like that's a crazy opportunity. So yeah, and for crying out loud too, if you're a legit business person, there are a lot of spookers out there that are more known than you. And if you want to share your experience and wisdom, you need to become more marketable, and your voice needs to be heard. So we need the real chiefs that have done the things and want to pass things on to really step up their game. And the people who don't have the skills or the experience to zip it a bit more.
Step down, yeah.
And earn it first before you talk about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I had such a pleasure talking with you, my Asian brother.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Lynn.
you.
Thanks, Lynn.